Throughout the 1970s and 80s, the Indian state pursued rapid infrastructure development to modernize its economy. This industrial expansion often required the direct consumption of the country's ancient, life-sustaining ecosystems. We can track this conflict through 6 specific geographical hotspots where the tension between industry and ecology reached a breaking point: Uttarakhand, the Narmada Valley, Jharkhand, the Western Ghats, Karnataka, and Kerala. These notes document the organized, geographically distinct responses to that era of state-sponsored deforestation and river damming. Activists in these regions prioritize the survival of local ecosystems over immediate industrial output, centering the protection of tribal and human rights within the national environmental debate. By analyzing the specific industrial threats, the leadership, and the resulting policy shifts of these 6 protests, we can track how grassroots mobilization changed the way the state manages its natural resources. Analyzing the geography of these specific movements is necessary to understand the legal and ethical foundation of modern Indian environmental policy. In North India, the conflict centered on the Bhagirathi River in Uttarakhand. This illustration shows the Tehri Dam project. The construction of a massive concrete barrier sparked a national debate over infrastructural progress. Shifting focus southward to central India, a similar conflict played out across the Narmada River basin, spanning Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. This map details the proposed infrastructure, notably the Sardar Sarovar project. In 1985, the Narmada Bachao Andolan formed to oppose these dams. The movement centered on uncompensated displacement of rural citizens and systemic failure of state rehabilitation plans. Mehta Patkar led the Narmada Bachao Andolan, uniting tribal people and farmers to demand accountability and fair resettlement. The physical scale of these megaprojects meant that entire landscapes and communities would be permanently submerged beneath reservoirs. These 2 movements established a precedent. State infrastructure development is not equivalent to progress if it relies on the forced displacement of marginalized citizens. To the east, in the Singhbhum region of Jharkhand, a different ecological crisis emerged in 1982. This graphic highlights the policy igniting the Jungle Bachao Andolan. The government began replacing diverse, natural mixed forests with uniform commercial teak plantations. Local communities resisted, fighting to protect indigenous forests crucial for their traditional livelihoods and food security. Because a commercial teak plantation functions as a monoculture crop, it cannot support the local wildlife or the indigenous populations that rely on forest foraging. For these tribal populations, the commercialization of the forests threatened their physical survival, prompting intense local resistance. In 1983, a similar battle for forest conservation began deep in the south, in the Western Ghats region of Karnataka. This study sheet details the Apiko movement. Led by Pandurang Hegde, it adopted the Chipko method, physically embracing trees to prevent felling them. The movement pursued 3 objectives: conservation of existing forests, active afforestation, and sustainable use of local resources. By utilizing this tactic, local villagers created an impassable human barrier against state-sanctioned logging operations. Jungle Bachao and Apiko challenged the state's focus on timber revenue, highlighting the economic and survival value that biodiverse forests provide to local communities. The Western Ghats form a continuous mountain range running parallel to India's western coast, hosting some of the most concentrated biodiversity on the planet. This document outlines the Save Western Ghats movement. As mining encroached, activists mobilized to protect the ecosystem. The movement drew national attention to the Ghats' unique biodiversity, proving industrial damage there would result in irreversible ecological loss. Activists were fighting to protect endemic species, like the lion-tailed macaque, which rely entirely on the unbroken canopy of the Ghats to survive. This map of Kerala pinpoints our final hotspot, Silent Valley, the site of a fierce debate. The state proposed a major hydroelectric project here. The construction would have decimated massive tracts of rare tropical evergreen forests. Following years of scientific and public opposition, the project was completely canceled, and Silent Valley was declared a national park in 1984. The cancellation of the Silent Valley Dam established a precedent. Ecological preservation could result in the total withdrawal of a major industrial project. From the Himalayas to Kerala, these 6 hotspots represent a unified timeline of resistance against unchecked industrial expansion. For exam preparation, the leadership associations are key: Sunderlal Bahuguna with TERI, Mehta Patkar with Narmada, and Pandurang Hegde with APICO. Despite their geographic differences, every movement was driven by a single principle: local communities have a right over their natural resources, and ecology must be prioritized alongside development. These decades of protest directly catalyzed the implementation of mandatory environmental impact assessments for large industrial projects in India. The objective of these movements was to maintain a balanced, thriving natural environment capable of sustaining both biodiversity and human life. The movements of the 70s and 80s integrated ecological preservation into Indian law, establishing the precedent that industrial energy demands must face public and environmental scrutiny.